Hi everybody, welcome to Talking Automotive with Mark and John. My name is John Sinclair and my co-host Mark Palavestra.
Hi John, today we've got a very exciting guest speaker. We've got Andrew Harbison from Isuzu Trucks. Andrew covers off some amazing information around the dynamics of the truck industry, what are the key biomotives and the trends going forward in that industry and what will likely impact the broader transportation market. So some really interesting and deep discussion around some topics that most people wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah, Mark, it's a really fascinating discussion, and especially it's so close to passenger, but is so different. And the way they approach the business in terms of the engagement with their dealers, with their customers, very interesting topic, and it was very enjoyable listening to. So let's jump into the discussion.
With 30 years' experience in auto logistics and state-of-the-art locations in 5 major Australian cities, PrixCar Fleet Services is an independent division of PrixCar Services, offering specialty fleet fit-outs for commercial applications ranging from simple tray and tow bar fitments to fully bespoke service body and accessory installation. With quality-assured safety, compliance and standardisation of vehicle builds, PrixCar Fleet Services are a premier all-in-one solutions provider for commercial vehicle fleet operators, leasing companies, and original equipment manufacturers. For further information on how PrixCar Fleet Services can assist in solving your commercial vehicle fit-out needs, please visit prixcar.com.au and click on the link to Fleet Services.
Now, Andrew, is that the Anglesey Proving Ground in the background?
That's a shot out of the front of my car on the way to Canberra for SUMMERNATS at Christmas time. So it's bushfire, smoke haze, somewhere probably just south of Albury. Yeah.
Gee, SUMMERNATS, that's a pretty cool event.
I've got a then 17-year-old son who was desperate to go and have a look around the car.
It's an interesting event. I went early days. I think it was late 80s, early 90s when it first started up. And from what I see now, it's extremely professional.
Oh, look, you couldn't fault it in terms of the way that they ran it and crowd control and everything from that point of view. It was fantastic. But there didn't seem to be as many people there this year as what I remember. And you know, I go back to the early 2000s when I was last there. But there didn't seem to be the crowds, but was in the thick of bushfires going on at the time. And, you know, it was touch and go that we were actually going to go, but we made the decision to go. And we got up there and got home again safely without any impact, just drove through a fair bit of smoke. And how are you guys finding things?
No, very good, Andrew. COVID's been an interesting case for us, but I think it's changing the whole perspective. And I think the industry is changing so much. So that's where it's interesting for Mark and I to talk to different people, because we've got so many changes coming with electric vehicles. You've got autonomous cars coming. You've got the whole way people research purchase of vehicles digitally now, especially for passenger cars.
Yeah.
Mark and I were chatting and said, well, let's start chatting to people in the industry about all the changes and what's happening. And we've done 22 podcasts. Getting people's different perspectives is great.
Yeah, there's not a lot of, you know, sort of in-depth analysis of the industry, is there, from that point of view? It's well overdue in some ways.
We saw this as a niche that was missing. And you're right, Andrew, with this, because basically what we started off doing, John and I, to work together, in each of our management team meetings, we'd get a guest speaker in to just talk about a specific topic related to the business. And this podcast series basically is that. It's a guest speaker coming in that we can talk about the business at a high level, but also then get in depth with some of the key drivers as to why is that so, and then what are the opportunities for the industry or for the audience going forward.
Okay, should we kick off?
Yeah, no problems. Let's go.
Hi, everybody. Today we're talking to Andrew Harbison. He's the Director and Chief Operating Officer at Isuzu Australia. He's an experienced and accomplished senior executive with many years' experience in the business. Been with Isuzu for more than 12 and a half years, and before that with Holden for 2 years, when Holden and Isuzu were still part of the same group at Isuzu GM Holden. And before that, he's had an extensive period with a tyre company. So Andrew, welcome, and great to have you on the show.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mark.
Andrew, keen to get your take and just to explain to our listeners the main structure of the truck industry here in Australia.
It's been an interesting year this year. I guess we all came into this year with somewhat of an optimistic outlook, but COVID hit in March and we all revised our outlooks quite significantly. And just talking to one of my fellow compatriots in another organisation, and we were just sharing an anecdote that during the early part of April, we'd all revised our outlooks down quite quite significantly. We've done scenarios around 25 to 40% down. And you look at where we are now, and thanks to government stimulus and everything else that's happened this year, that the outlook is significantly better than what it is. We've actually come through this period a lot healthier than what it's been. So it's been very good. But, look, the truck industry is a fascinating one. And as you said in the introduction, I spent a couple of years with Holden, and at the time I moved out of the aftermarket industry into Holden, and I really viewed Holden as being the pinnacle of the automotive industry, and it was a dream come true to end up there. But I was given the opportunity to transfer across to the truck industry. I feared it was going to be a backward step. I thought I'd have to blow off the dust off my blue singlets and my thongs and, eat a lot of meat pies. But no, the truck industry it's a fascinating industry. It's an incredibly professional industry, and it's a step I feel incredibly blessed to have taken and really do love it. In terms of the difference between cars and trucks, the biggest difference is that a truck is designed really for one purpose, and that is to carry stuff around. Cars are designed to carry people around. Trucks are designed to carry stuff around. And at the end of the day, we have over 200 models in our range, and we have so many different models because they're all designed to carry more or less stuff than another one. And ultimately, that's the governing feature of the model range. A very good salesman or sales manager in a car dealership, the ability to listen to a customer and then look at the opportunity of walking them up from a base model to a much higher level model, whereas in the truck industry, the art really is to listen to your customer and put them into the right vehicle for their job. Look, lots of different ways to break the industry up, but ultimately it comes down to how much stuff you want to carry around.
And when you look at the segments, you've got like the N Series, F Series, and the Gigas, etc. Where's the main, which is the biggest segment? Is it the bigger long line haul stuff, or is it the N or F Series?
No, well, interestingly, when you ask someone who doesn't necessarily know much about the truck industry to think of a truck, what they do think of is the semi-trailer or the B-double that runs up and down the Hume Highway to Sydney and back overnight. And yet, no, that's not the biggest segment of the truck industry. The largest segment is actually what they call the car driver's license segment. The Truck Industry Council, who produces the truck market reporting, starts their measurements at 3.5 tonne GVM and runs all the way up to 100 plus tonnes at the very top end. But the segment between 3.5 and 4.5 tonne, which is that car driver's license segment, actually accounts for 40% of the total truck industry. It's a massive segment, and it's quite misunderstood. When you think about the trucking industry, that's the largest segment of it.
And has that continued to grow? Is that the online shopping delivery type vehicle? Is that where it's growing?
Absolutely. Oh, look, there's a couple of things that are driving the growth in that area, and yes, that's one of the big ones. Seeing the Coles and the Woolworths really pushing that online delivery, and they've been buying many, many hundreds of vehicles each year to try and keep up with the demand on that. But the other part of it that's also growing quite significantly is your typical tradie who has traditionally gone and bought a single cab or a dual cab ute and thrown his cement mixer in the back with a pallet of concrete bags and then gumboots hanging off the side. A vehicle that's designed to carry about it nominally. We all know they only carry about 400 kilos at the end of the day, but they're significantly overloading them, and there's been a fair move away, particularly in fleet companies, where they're moving towards putting them into a proper light commercial vehicle that will carry the load safely. So that's been the second massive area of growth that we're seeing.
Andrew, because that maybe leads into the next question, can you explain the difference between vans and light, medium and heavy vehicles? How does it all fit together?
Okay, well, broadly we talk about there being 4 different segments in the industry. So there's the light duty vans, or then we move into the light duty trucks, and then medium duty and heavy duty, and they're all segregated based on their either GVM rating or the GCM rating. But the difference in the measurements that we work on is you have a van, which is a full style side vehicle that we would traditionally think of. Started out, I guess, with those old Ford Transit vans many decades ago. But that segment is growing and quite popular because of the ability for a driver to be able to walk through and remain inside the vehicle and then exit outside door. A light duty truck is a cab chassis. So it has the cab at the front and some form of, whether it's chassis rails or some other mechanism that will hold the back wheels in place until they build a body on the back of it. Now, some of the things like the Renaults, which you guys would have experience with, come in either a cab chassis variant or a van variant. The vans fall into the van market, the cab chassis fall into that light duty segment of the market. So we measure, or the industry measures the light duty product between 3.5 tonne GVM up to 8,000 kilos GVM, medium duty van, basically any 4x2 or 4x4 products up to or greater than 8,000 kilograms and less than 39,000 kilograms GCM. So the heavy duty market is anything 3 axles or more with a GVM greater than 8,000 kilograms and a GCM of greater than 39,000 kilograms. So yeah, anything 3 axles or more is probably the simplest way to put the heavy duty market.
Now, Andrew, you mentioned the car license segment is the biggest segment of the truck market. So that's is it the N series vehicle?
Yes, that's correct in our range, yes.
So is there also a motorhome version of that as well? Or is that something that you guys do or are you looking at doing?
Yeah, look, motorhomes is an interesting one, and we have done a lot of motorhomes over the years. There has been a trend more recently away from traditional cab forward type motorhome to, a more conventional style, so, the Fiats or the Renaults or those type of things, simply because of the driver comfort. Yeah, look, a truck is designed to carry a load more so than being a recreational vehicle as such. So the driver comfort is important to us, and we do spend a lot of time in making sure that our trucks are comfortable for our drivers. But real driver comfort comes at a compromise around long-term load carrying capacity and reliability. Yeah, look, it's a segment we dabble in, but not a huge amount.
So Andrew, what are the main segments that Isuzu operate in?
Yeah, look, again, Isuzu's been the market leader of the truck market for just about 32 years at the end of this year. The industry there is somewhere between 21 and 25 different competitors here in the marketplace. It's a really fiercely competitive market, but we've got just under 25% market share. So effectively 1 in 4 trucks across the entire truck industry is an Isuzu. To be able to achieve that, we need to be something to everybody. We don't operate in that very top end. We don't sell an awful lot of semi-trailers. We don't sell many B double specified vehicles at all. But just about every other segment of the marketplace, we will need to be active in. We really do need to be something to everybody to achieve what we need to achieve.
That's a pretty good record, 32 years of market leadership. Is something that, if you look back at the halcyon days of Holden, I don't think they even achieved that.
Yeah, you're dead right, Mark. And look, we focus on that a lot. On one hand, it's a huge honour to lead an organisation that's such an enviable position. But on the other hand, it's the one thing that keeps you awake at night. You wouldn't want to be the bloke in my chair when you ever lost market leadership, because it's such a strong legacy position that we're in.
And with 25 competitors and yet to still have 25% market share, that is phenomenal.
Oh, it is. It is. And it's a real testament to the early days and the focus that we've put on really 2 factors of what it is that we do, and have a really strong relationship with our customers. And we spend an awful lot of time and effort ensuring that we know their business and we work with them on making sure that we're true business partners to them. And secondly, we've got an incredibly strong dealer network, and we've got 36 dealers around Australia, which compared to the halcyon days of Holden, with their 300 plus dealers, doesn't sound like a lot. But between our 36 dealers and when we add in branches and what we call our authorised service and partner outlets, we've got somewhere in the mid-70s of dealer points and contact points around the nation. So it's a really strong dealer network, and we view our business with our dealers as being a long-term partnership. And we don't turn dealers over very quickly, and we have a lot of our dealers who have been with us since the very beginnings of the Isuzu run here in Australia. So we have a really strong relationship.
And Andrew, so given a lot of the business is B2B, and you're talking about that very close customer relationship, how much do you have, how close are you with the leasing companies and the fleet management organisations?
Oh, yeah, look, we try and work very closely with them. So we have a dedicated team of people here based out of our head office here in Melbourne that's part of our sales department, who concentrate on managing the relationships with our key national fleet account. We have a guy based in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and one also in Western Australia. And they do keep very close relationships with all of our key customers. Fleet management companies are an important part of the automotive industry, and we work very closely on working with them to be part of the value equation we offer our customers.
Because it's a very technical sale, isn't it? When you mentioned before about listening to the customer and really putting their needs at the forefront when you're selecting a vehicle and the choice of vehicles to have 200 models. Yeah. The big one, I suppose, is the bodybuilder's guide with weight distribution and making sure that they do have the correct vehicle. How involved do you get with that?
Oh, very. My predecessor drummed into my head, and I guess all of our heads that came up through the sales channel is that we don't buy problems. We want to sell solutions to our customers. Obviously, you can take an easy path to a sale and you can take a quick win and sell a customer something that they think they might need, or for them something that's substandard just based on meeting a price point. But understanding that how important a truck is to our customers' business, and then how long they're going to need to rely on it, you can pretty quickly move away from that initial price argument and talk about, what that long-term solution is. But one of our key selling tools is a computer system that we have that's a proprietary one called Isuzu. Now, we had that name first, and we're going to keep it. It's an acronym, and it stands for the Isuzu Sales Information System, and it's a tool that we provide to all of our dealers. And it's exactly as you say, Mark. It's around going through a series of questions, and it will suggest a solution in terms of the right truck. And then it's almost an engineering grade body build solution where they can go and fit the body, fit the accessories and the other equipment, and ensure that it's going to meet the customer's expectations, not only in terms of correct load carrying and the load distribution across the truck, but also something that not a lot of people think about if they're not educated in the truck industry is you can load a truck up to 100% of its GVM, and yes, it will legally do the job. But if you're then wanting to be able to run intrastate or even interstate, when you get that vehicle out on the road, if you're just barely meeting those GVM requirements, you'll find that the performance of the vehicle may not necessarily meet what you want to do. Again, this solution will go through the engineering process of calculating what your on-road speed will be. And there's nothing more embarrassing. I'm sure we've all been caught behind a truck doing 25 kilometres an hour on the highway going up a hill. Now, the truck will legally carry the load, but certainly with modern trucks, if you specify the right piece of equipment, there's no reason it needs to slow down anything like that. Making sure it carries the load correctly and meets the customer's performance expectations is a big part of that long-term solution that we provide to our customers.
Yeah, that whole loading capacity is so important because it impacts your braking ability, everything, wear and tear, fuel consumption. I think it makes a really good point. Andrew, your staff must play a key factor in talking about your relationship with dealers, your relationship with customers. The staff must be a really important part of the business too.
Yes, it is. And we put a real focus on our people, and been a big focus of mine since I've moved into the chair that I'm in, about making sure that we have the right people. You give them the right tools and equipment, and then the authority and the autonomy to go and do their job in the field. And we're very proud of the position that we have with our people. And the guys who work with our dealers and our customers are the face of Isuzu, and we give them the full authority of sitting effectively in my chair to our dealers or customers, and they make the decisions and we stand by what they do. People are critical, important to us.
Because the staff turnover in your organisation would be quite low.
Yes, it is. And it's something that we've put a lot of focus on. We had some challenges in terms of employee engagement a number of years ago, and we've done a lot of work around improving the engagement and the culture. And proud to say that over the last 3 years, we've gone from results that we weren't overly pleased with in terms of some industry benchmark employee surveys to being right in the top quartile now. Again, it's your people that make your business, and we've invested a lot in getting that right.
Andrew, in terms of the whole truck market, what are the things that drive activity in the truck sector? What are the economic indicators that you need to watch to understand what's happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. In general, it's general economic activities. We do tend to sort of track GDP as probably the first indicator of what's happening in our industry. Some of the other ones that we monitor is things like residential housing starts is a really important one, because, as I said, so much of that light duty market is involved trade type people. Home residential building is a big one. Government infrastructure spending is another one that is a massive one for us. We love it when governments invest money in building big projects because you need big trucks and little trucks to be a big part of all of that. And consumer sentiment and business sentiment are the other two that we really tend to track. I guess because the truck industry has fingers in just about every industry around Australia, the GDP is probably the best indicator of what's happening.
And a question for me around that kind of activity and the long haul versus the smaller duty delivery type vehicles and trade vehicles. Yeah. Is the long haul segment more competitive for the truck operators versus the smaller truck type deliveries? Is it really cutthroat for the long haul deliveries versus the smaller stuff?
Look, I don't know a huge amount of the line haul business, to be 100% honest with you, but what we're seeing is that the industry is changing in terms of the level of professionalism. So things around government regulation and chain of responsibility and the like are putting the onus on ensuring that drivers are looked after, that vehicles are maintained. The rogue operators, guys, I guess, have really sort of pushed the margins down to the bare bones, have been forced to leave the industries. It's not an industry you'd come into if you wanted to earn a quick buck and make millions of dollars out of it in the short haul. But no, look, I think you'll find that because long haul then leads to the rest of the distribution chain, that the money's relatively even throughout it all. But one of the big trends that we're seeing from that point of view is that the medium duty part of the sector is actually the one that's shrinking a little bit. And it's this move to online shopping. Instead of your line haul trucks taking it from the ports to big distribution centres and then a medium duty truck breaking the goods down and moving them out to shopping centres, the line haul trucks are taking them to the big DCs. But then we've got these hundreds and hundreds of little trucks going directly to the consumer's residence or to their offices. That's probably the biggest change that we're seeing, and it's the medium duty players in it all that are probably the ones that are feeling it the hardest.
Andrew, in terms of high level numbers, can you give us an idea of the actual numbers in the market and where they're trending?
The truck market, I mentioned before the number of competitors in it, and it's fascinating that there are so many here because the truck market in its record year, which was a couple of years ago, was 2018. There was only 41,600 trucks sold here in Australia. Last time I did the numbers, which would be a couple of years ago, there were 13 or more brands that were competing for less than 1,000 units a year each, which is really hard to make a bit of a business case around. We've seen steady growth in the market since the GFC. This year to date, we're trending, the industry's about 25,000 units. Now, we anticipate the market will probably come in somewhere around about 32, 34 type numbers, still down significantly. We're anticipating that will bounce back somewhat from this year with the coronavirus. We'll continue to see that steady growth in the industry of somewhere between sort of 2 to 5% year on year for the coming years. One of the challenges in our industry is the age of vehicles. There's a massive truck park. There's over 650,000 vehicles officially in the truck park here in Australia. And one of the biggest challenges we see in terms of the overall numbers and trends is the age of the vehicles on the road is continuing to increase and currently sitting at well over 14 years at the moment. So we've got a massive truck park and it's just not being turned over all that quickly.
That must be doing wonders for your parts business.
Yeah, look, on one hand, it's fantastic from that point of view. That older trucks are the biggest consumers of parts, and that certainly is important to us, and constantly love to see that area of the business grow. On the other hand, it's interesting in that, on one end of that age spectrum, you've got these really new modern trucks, and we're in the middle of talking about the introduction of ADR 8804 or Euro 6 type equivalent here in Australia, and that traditionally comes with a host of new features in trucks. So on one end, you've got these fantastic green vehicles that are full of the latest safety technology, but on the other hand, you've got vehicles that predate the 2006 round of emissions, and the safest thing that they've got is doors that close. It's a real interesting balance we've got in the industry.
That's incredible that the average age now is 14 years. So from a new truck purchase, I'm guessing they would be retained for 6-7 years. Would that be fair to say, or do they turn them over faster?
Yeah, we suggest that the first ownership life cycle is about 7 years, and then they get sort of moved down through the second and the third owners.
And as far as the maintenance side of things, the retention in your dealerships, Devon, I'm guessing these trucks would be doing, 100,000 Ks a year. Would that be fair to say that a lot of these trucks are doing those sorts of kilometres?
Yeah, look, the real spread in the average kilometre usage, the smaller trucks obviously don't do the massive kilometres and probably more like a typical tool of trade type car that you'd see. So I think that we say the average is between 30 and 40,000 kilometres a year on a light duty truck. Medium duty truck, anywhere between sort of 60 and 100,000 kilometres. And then depending on the application, obviously those big long haul things are doing 300,000-400,000 kilometres a year. They rack up 1 million kilometres in 3 years. Yeah, there is a big demand for service requirements, and we love doing anything we can to see our customers coming back into our workshop so that we can keep those vehicles operating the way that they should be.
Andrew, now you mentioned that COVID has impacted the volume for this next year down 30, 35%, nearly 40%. How does it compare against the GFC? Have you seen any different type of trends, or has it impacted the market differently against the GFC?
We came into this period expecting the market, or fearing that the market would drop somewhere around 25 to 40%. Year to date, though, the truck market overall is only down 13%. And pleasingly, because of our mix of business, we're only down 7%. So whilst we don't delight in the circumstances, we've actually had a very good year in terms of improving our market result. We're only down half the numbers of the market. In terms of the GFC, what we saw was a really immediate drop, and the GFC dropped our market by a third between 2008 and 2009. And because it was such a major economic shock to us, it really took almost 10 years to recover to those same numbers. So we saw this massive drop in GFC, then really slow, steady climb out of it. As I said, the market is down 13% this year, and we'll probably track it around that number through to the end of the year. And we're anticipating somewhere between 2 and 4% growth next year, unless something unforeseen happens again.
Now, Andrew, with the GFC, the biggest issue there would have been getting finance. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, well, that was certainly a massive part of it. And I think it was also, more broadly speaking, just a massive economic shock and the fear of unknown of what was going to happen as well. But yeah, dead right, finance was a massive problem.
And is getting finance a problem now?
No, not really. The finance companies have tightened up a little bit, like all of us did back in the early months of this period, as we were staring down the barrel of really an unknown circumstance, that things did get fairly tight, that they were looking very hard at financials of our customers. But no, through the government incentive and through seeing that the Armageddon didn't occur, no, the finance position has opened back up again pretty quickly. It's just pleasing.
And in terms of the customer industry segments, can you talk about some of those industry segments and what sort of impacts they're having on the different segments?
Yeah, there are many different ways you can segment the market, but to put it into, some broad segments that we utilise, distribution is one of the really big segments. We talk about production, and that's mining, manufacturing, agriculture. There's a bunch of different categories we classify under services. Government are a big consumer of trucks, the construction industry, retail and hospitality, and health and education are sort of the final groupings that we classify customers under internally. As we've spoken about, distribution is really going mad. There's a lot of consumer activity happening, particularly with the online stuff. That's driven a lot of activity there. Construction and trades has been very strong. We think that will slow down as home builder comes to an end, but I think that activity will carry through till mid-year next year. The government market tends to remain steady, depending on, regardless, of what's happening in the general economy. The production side of things, ag has had a really good year this year. Early in the year, we heard about pretty bad droughts in certain part of Australia, but that's all been broken, so ag's been pretty good. Mining is going mad again at the moment. The areas that are probably struggling are in that retail and hospitality area, as we all know. Particularly here in Victoria, the poor old retail segment's had a pretty tough time over the last 3 or 4 months.
And it's interesting, the agriculture. So do you do a bit in the agricultural place? Do you play in that area a fair bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely we do. We bought around the support stuff. We don't necessarily build big long-haul grain trucks or big semi-trailers that pull livestock to the markets, but we certainly do provide a lot of support services to those things. So, yes, we do. And it's a very good segment of the market for us.
So, Andrew, in terms of your business, most of your business is B2B. Are you seeing any changes in the way you do business with the advent of you spoke about your RSS tool for helping customers identify what their needs are. But are you seeing any changes in the way you deal with customers?
Yeah, absolutely. But not being able to visit people has been a massive one. Where so much of our relationship building is done face to face. Certainly that segment of B2B is changing. We do have a large segment of B2C as well, and a lot of the trends that we're seeing in that in terms of, your digital approach, the virtual tools are changing the going and meeting face to face. Now, whilst we want to get back to doing that, it's enabled us to maintain relationships and built into our business some efficiencies that we hope will continue to move forward. We've been lucky even through this lockdown period that in the main our dealers have been able to operate reasonably normally. Dealers here in Melbourne under strict lockdown obviously haven't been able to run the front end of their businesses, but they've still been doing virtual selling and maintaining relationships with their customers. From that point of view, we have got a really robust digital strategy and that we have in place to communicate with all of our customers. Interestingly, we've seen over the course of this period, our web traffic and online inquiries has increased 20%. So that's a massive jump. And what this is doing is it's also sort of helping accelerate some of the better digital tools you can look at, things like marketing tools, showcase products, etc., using 360-degree walkarounds and the like. We're really sort of moving to that type of stuff too because of need this year, and we will carry that forward because it adds efficiencies to our business.
Well, it sounds fantastic as far as that digital infrastructure, doing the 360 walkarounds, etc. And is it interactive with people in your dealerships, or is it with your head office people, or is it something that the customer can do at their own time, at their own pace?
Yeah, look, it's a combination of both. I don't think we've got to the point of it being completely interactive, but we've got virtual walkarounds that the customer can control, focusing on the areas that they want to do. And the other thing that we have been doing for some time, but we're doing more of now is some of our specialists do virtual walkarounds and doing the old 6-point sell, but doing it virtually, that a customer can grab that and have a look at it, or our dealers can use it to help inform their customers at the time of inquiry.
Andrew, at a very high level, I know it's very difficult because different sectors may be different, but what are the main things that customers look at when purchasing a truck? What are the key points they'll be looking at in detail?
Yeah, good question, John. Again, it goes back to where I started, and you've got to remember that a truck is a piece of capital equipment, and it's designed to do a job. Now, we've got people who've never bought a truck before coming into our dealerships or interacting with us, and generally they will start with the old price question because they really don't know what else they want to start with. But a lot of our customers have been there and understand what they're looking for. The ability for the truck to do the job correctly and reliably is probably the two most important things at the end of the day for them. Spoke a bit before about making sure that the load carrying capacity is correct for them. None of them want to be pulled up on the side of the road and be defected for being overloaded. But it's just as important about the performance of the vehicle. They want the truck to do the job correctly for them. Price is not a great guide in this game. You've got to make sure that you get the right product, and then we talk about making the right value for money decision. But after-sales service is probably the most important element of it all. The truck is reliable, then that's a fantastic thing. Customers do understand, though, that being capital equipment or a tool of trade, that something does happen every so often, and it's making sure that they've got the big red button that says help, and being able to support them and keep them on the road when that happens. It's really that whole package that they're looking for.
And so whole-of-life costs would be, say, a leasing company would look at those sorts of elements, but for your main smaller consumer B2B purchases, they're looking for that reliability and that fit for purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, a lot of people that own a truck don't necessarily know how much the truck is going to cost them to maintain it correctly. A lot of the fleets and a lot of the bigger players are, certainly really hot on total cost of ownership, and that's a really important criteria. Yeah, but it's the reliability. The cost of a service becomes, I guess, a small cost compared to the impact it can have on your business if the truck breaks down on the side of the road. Standing that reliability is critical, is where they're looking for.
And you mentioned your digital strategy. We're seeing across the industry that social media is can be a fantastic thing, but also can be a painful thing. Is social media a big thing in the truck business?
Absolutely it is. I'll preface this by saying I was sitting in a meeting with our marketing agency 5 or 6 years ago, and we went through the classifications that people fall into, and the head of our marketing agency and I fell into the digital dinosaur category. So I come from the digital dinosaur point of view when I talk about all of this. But yes, look, the website's obviously the first part of our digital strategy, and flicking back through some old material, I found early versions of our website that date back to the 1990s, but that has now really morphed into things like YouTube and other social media channels. And it really is part of our overall marketing strategy of communicating with our customers. Yes, a lot of people who may not necessarily consider a truck or necessarily be in the market first see or touch our brand through Facebook or through YouTube or through one of those other channels, and then get directed into some of the more mass marketing type activities that we see. YouTube's a fascinating one. Over the last couple of years, we've created marketing campaigns that have been exclusively seen on YouTube and then promoted through social media as opposed to traditional mass market media. It's a fascinating area. We had our first experience of what I would consider to be some form of viral result out of a YouTube video, and it was a funny little video that we created with Shane Jacobson, who's been our brand ambassador for the last 5 or 6 years, and it was promoting a new product that we didn't really know how it would go in the marketplace, and it pretty quickly racked up 86,000 hits. Now, I mean, that's not a massive number against some of the other big brands, but when you consider that there is 41,000 trucks sold in the market in a year, we had 86,000 hits pretty quickly on this video, and since then the digital marketing people have worked their magic, and some of our latest campaigns have seen over 1 million YouTube views now through a combination of the organic and the paid views. So it's a really big part of our strategy now, and you're seeing massive influx of leads coming through these campaigns that commence in social.
Yeah, it's such an important part of the business, and it just creates a human part that people can experience and see and understand the business and build that trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're big fans, aren't we, John? That's why we have this YouTube channel.
Well, it's such an effective and low cost way of being able to communicate a message out to our customers. I'm sure we've all done it. We use these kind of tools to communicate with our staff. 12 months ago, you'd call them all together into the showroom of your office, and you'd have a chat with them. Now you can pretty quickly put together a 15-minute video and communicate with them and get the same message out to them from the comfort of your own office, which is wonderful.
Now, Andrew, you've spoken about dealers being a very important part, and you treat them as true partners in your business. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about where do you see the opportunities and the big challenges for dealers going forward?
Yeah, look, we spend a lot of time, obviously, from the front end of the business, sure that they're maximising their market share. And we quite often refer to going back to basics there and, just making sure that they're doing the simple things well. But the reality is when you've got 25% market share in such a competitive market, things are going pretty well. It's really only incremental improvements you can make there. So really the big opportunities from a dealer network point of view are around the back-end efficiencies and getting better profitability through their service departments and capitalising on that massive truck park through growing your parts business.
And you mentioned that you don't turn over many dealers, so I'm guessing you wouldn't be going through a regular performance management process with, say, the bottom 5% of your dealer network, or how does that work?
Look, yes, we have a very robust dealer evaluation process and business planning process that we go through with our dealers. So, we lock in a 5-year business plan as part of our standard 5-year DSSA, and we're very clear in what our expectations are with our dealers. We also have an annual business planning process with them, and we evaluate our dealers on a quarterly basis and ensure that we all understand where the areas of opportunities are. And we do from time to time set dealers that fall into performance review type category. And again, we have that in place so that we can work with those dealers to improve their performance and get them back up into the pack. We don't ever like seeing the process of having to exit a dealer, and it's been a while since we've had to do that. We just see that it's a long-term relationship, and like every relationship, you have ups and downs, and you commit to working through the down periods, and you have some really good high periods through it all. And it's a really strong relationship.
Andrew, it sounds like you've got very structured processes and systems and that for dealing through all that, and very transparent. That's really important for dealers, I think. have that engagement. So they always know where they stand if there's things they need to improve.
Yeah, look, we try and, sort of keep it fairly simple. We often say it's not brain surgery we're doing, but, it's a fairly simple business at the end of the day. You just do the right thing and treat people the way you want to be treated. And, that goes for your dealers as much as it does with your customers. And like you try and do with your kids, I guess, you set clear expectations and clear boundaries and hold them to account when they when they go and do their naughty things or whatever they may do. So like any relationship, you've just got to be clear up front and consistent in the way you approach it all.
Now, you mentioned the maintenance as you see as a profit opportunity for the network and getting those efficiencies. Where do you see the industries at from retention, but also in that whole service and parts side? Is there a lot of competition from outside of the network? And what are the initiatives that you see or are you putting in place to retain those customers in your dealer network and your parts business?
Yeah, look, I guess there's probably three broad categories that we think about when you're talking about the way a customer gets their vehicle maintained. Firstly is obviously the dealer-based servicing, and we're doing some work at the moment on getting a better understanding of where our retention rate is at, and that's something we want to continue to focus on growing. The second broad area is customers who maintain their vehicles themselves. That's getting more complex for them now. Going back 20 years ago, you used to be able to drop the oil out of it and run a grease gun over it, and you'd carried out a minor service on it, whereas now that with the level of technology, it's becoming more difficult for them to do that, although customers still opt to do it. The third area, a lot of customers have their own workshops now, whether that be some of the bigger local government councils, whether it's the tolls and the TNTs and the like, who in some areas have their own maintenance facilities. The biggest driver of what's happening here is, on one end, it's the change in technology that limits the ability of customers to be able to do it themselves. And the other end is the government requirements around chain of responsibility is a big factor in it all. And the third area then really becomes, in that broad area, is the aftermarket industry. And if people do choose to use their mate down the street or, the guy that's been looking after their vehicles for the last 20 or 30 years. So for both the customers that look after themselves, run their own workshops or using the aftermarket, the challenges are getting more difficult for them in terms of just the level of technology involved in and having the knowledge of being able to how to maintain them safely, with the pressure of the government saying you've got to look after these and you're going to be held responsible if there's an accident or an issue with the vehicle that causes harm or injury to a person. Big opportunity for our dealers to continue to grow their service and parts business by focusing on helping the customers understand and maximise their chain of responsibility requirements.
Now, Andrew, for those customers who do their own servicing, you don't share any diagnostic machines or any backup support material or training for those customers?
Look, it's a thing that the industry is grappling with around the sharing of this OEM data. And look, we as an industry and we as a company are working to ensure that we provide that information where it's required in line with what the government and the ACCC are asking us to do. The biggest challenge is I think that the aftermarket industry or customers think that they have access to this diagnostic equipment, that they'll automatically then be able to overcome any issue that they can see in the vehicle. But what they forget is that 25 or 30 years of experience and just that wealth of OEM knowledge that's very hard to transfer. So we work on being proactive in that area, but obviously we still believe that the solution for our customers in the long haul is to come back to a branded OEM-backed service and parts outlet.
Now, Andrew, a question for you, looking forward now to the future. Where do you see the industry and business confidence heading, and also interest rates, and just what you see from a construction perspective? Is it a rosy future that you see? Is it a bumpy future? Or is there going to be a fragmented move forward because of one sector more so than another?
Oh, look, all in all, I think that the future is somewhat rosy, and I'm somewhat optimistic. When you travel around in any capital city, you'll often see one of those signs on the back of a truck that says, "Without trucks, Australia stops moving." Because the trucking industry is so much part of the fabric of our society, whilst Australia continues to move forward, even with very slow, steady growth, we're going to continue to see growth in our industry. I think interest rates are going to remain somewhat steady. There's not much further south they can go, and I don't know that there's much benefit in going any further south anyway. Business confidence appears to be bouncing back fairly quickly, and I anticipate that that's going to maintain. The freight volumes are anticipated to continue to keep growing. Some of our customers are expecting it to grow quite significantly. That's positive from that point of view. We've done a terrific job this year in terms of capitalising on. It's been a tough year, but there's no doubt that much of the success of our business and the industry has been driven by government stimulus. And the government has done a wonderful job in supporting the economy. And they're talking about some really major investments in infrastructure projects, and that being flowed down through state and local governments. And we love hearing them talk about major infrastructure projects or things as simple as the local council fixing their local road, because when they're spending money on doing that sort of stuff, they need trucks to support it. All in all, I'm overall relatively optimistic about what the future's looking like, both in the short and the long term.
I hear what you're saying, re the local council. I think every local council truck I've seen would have to be one of yours.
Oh, we have a fairly high proportion of them, thank goodness. Yeah, absolutely.
Fresh seafood, brought to you by Isuzu. Oh, don't shut the lid, it's actually... Nope, he shut the lid.
Come to think of it, anything and everything is brought to you by Isuzu.
It's funny, once you see the Isuzu brand and once you become aware of it, you see it just about everywhere.
Now, Andrew, you mentioned earlier that many of the new vehicles sold now meet the latest emission requirements. Do you think there will be any legislation going forward in terms of emissions? And what impact do you think that would have on the industry?
Oh, look, the truck industry led the automotive industry in terms of the adoption of Euro 5 back in 2011. And we're still talking to government at the moment around the introduction of Euro 6 or the Euro 6 equivalent. And that will come. They're just debating at the moment on the exact timing of that. And at this stage, it looks like it's going to be around 2024. What they're also still arguing about at the moment is the level of Euro 6 that they're going to. And the government appears at the moment to be wanting to go to the most stringent level of that, which is, a very high level of onboard diagnostics. Already at Euro 5, the emissions coming out of a vehicle are very, very low. So there's really only fairly marginal improvements in terms of the emission standards. Moving to Euro 6, it's an inevitable move. It comes with greater complexity in terms of emission controls and other technologies involved in the vehicle. Management of fuel economy is probably a bigger driver of emission standards here in Australia. But I think where the benefit will come from the consumers as a whole is that, as you know, manufacturers will roll out as part of these major upgrades the big new features. So with Euro 6 will come, a much greater adoption across the board of really advanced safety technologies. Those two tend to go hand in hand.
And electric trucks?
Yeah, that's a fascinating area. And we did a local trial here a couple of years ago and see that there's an opportunity for electric trucks here in Australia and in many markets around the world. But it's just one of a number of solutions. Most of the experts are telling us that diesel is still the most efficient and effective powertrain choice for the next 20, 30 years. Efficiencies and effectiveness you can get out of a diesel engine now still make it the most likely and reliable choice for our customers. EV in the right location will be wonderful, but I still question the logic of an EV truck when you're burning brown coal to charge it back up again. When you look at it in the whole ecosystem, it's not as environmentally friendly right now. The fascinating area that's coming at us again at the moment is the old fuel cell argument. And I think that we'll see a combination of all of these technologies being part of our future coming at us in the next 5 to 10 years.
It's amazing, Andrew. You spoke to an industry operative from the petroleum industry, and diesel sales are up. As from 2013, diesel sales fuel consumption is increasing year on year, but yet petrol sales from 2013 have been dropping.
Wow, is that right? Yeah.
When I ask the question, it's very much your industry that's using it. It's not actually diesel passenger vehicles at all. It's that extra demand for us consumers to have goods moved around. So,
oh, absolutely.
We also had a discussion with diesel fuel technology, John, with RK Lab. I love diesel. I'm a massive fan of diesel technology, being an old mechanic, and it's just incredible how efficient now and how clean burning diesels are, and there's still even more that can be achieved out of it. Diesel's definitely not done yet.
Yeah, absolutely. The technology involved is just fascinating, as you say, Mark. I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but I love all things mechanical. And we talked about internally a number of years ago why fuel injectors don't last as long and they had to be made of much harder materials. And what we discovered fairly quickly is, rather than a fuel injector in a diesel truck injecting just one squirt of diesel per revolution, that they're squirting 12, 13, 14, 15 times just to get that massive improvement in the efficiency of the fuel burns. The work that's being done on improving diesel technology, just continues unabated. And as I say, that they're still predicting that diesels will be the primary source of power for trucks in particular for the next 30 years. There will be continued development happening in that area for many years to come. You'll certainly see me out of the industry, I think.
The interesting thing with Arcolab was two things. One is to the bigger engines, so marine and rail and heavy construction equipment, those sort of sectors. And then also the retrofit market, because that's the challenge is if you can't retrofit, there's a lot of, especially in some of the third world countries, there's a lot of these trucks that's still running around there that are 25, 30 years old. So if you can't find some sort of solution to retrofit there, that will help have big impact on emissions immediately. To me and Mark, it's a fascinating subject. We could talk about it for quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, anything, I think, to get some of those black smoke belching old vehicles off the road, whether that be through some form of steam to get them off the road or even to get a newer or a better emission standard type of motor into them would be a significant improvement. You go back to a 1995 type, Euro 2 type truck, and one of them is equivalent in terms of the emission outputs to about 70 of the current day truck. It doesn't take too many of rectifying down that bottom end before you have a massive impact on the overall situation.
Now, Andrew, I was keen to ask one question about when we're looking at the future. So what if you were to just single out one area that you see as the main driver of change as a trend, what would that be?
That's a good question. We, I guess, like all automotives, are dealing with that CASE acronym, the connected, autonomous, shared and electric of the different trends that are coming at the moment. I think that all four of those areas will have a massive impact on us. Electric and or alternate fuels is one that's very topical at the moment. The autonomous one, look, I think that autonomous trucks are further away than what some people predict them to be. I just don't see that we have the societal will or the road infrastructure to enable autonomous trucks to be running around. But having said that, the technology is there now. A lot of these advanced safety systems that we're seeing in our vehicles are the technologies of autonomous. So that's a big impact. Shared is a fascinating one, and the Uberization of the industry. And we have a lot of customers who might have a truck that they use for a couple of hours a day, and yet it then sits for 22 hours not doing anything. How we get better utilisation is another one. But to me, I think the one that's going to be the biggest impact in the next sort of 5 years time frame is the connected area. We live in a connected society. I think that we're seeing much more connectivity between vehicle to vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle back to base and the like. And I think that there's so many benefits to truck owners, to fleet managers, to end users, and also to society as a whole in getting that connectivity correctly implemented. To me, that's where the next big moves are. To a truck owner or a truck driver, things like predictive maintenance and some form of predictive failure in vehicles is the holy grail of how you minimise downtime and maximise your total cost of ownership by being able to provide that known flexibility and protect your assets. Yeah, to me, I think connectivity is probably the biggest one.
Andrew, thank you. You've nailed it as far as the questions I've got. Now, this is the tricky bit. I've got 2.5 pages of notes that are all over the place here now, so I won't go in chronological order, but I'll see if I can. And Andrew, correct me if I've missed anything or if you want to add something to it. But first and foremost, I really thank you for coming on the show today. The industry and the segment that you're in is so exciting because it's different to the car business. Totally different, because cars are very much about emotion, whereas you've got a business that is about a need, and that need is very much to carry stuff. And that was the key point that you raised very early in the piece. And it's the industry is becoming more professional. And so the road operators have been forced out with legislation, with the various manslaughter rules that are now in play. You can't afford to be a road operator. And it's interesting you highlighted that with the truck market, and with 41,000 trucks sold in 2018, that was the peak. This year's looking at 34,000. You're at 34,000 now, but you're probably going to figure around that. So it is is down, but your business is not down as much as the market is, and the industry is.
That's correct.
So 25% market share is phenomenal. When you've got up to 25 competitors in the segment, and you've been market leader for 32 years. Now, that's saying something that you're getting something right, that you can be so far ahead of the competition. And I thought an interesting point that you raised was that there are a number of brands, 13 brands sell less than 1,000 trucks, and it's hard to be sustainable. So you've got scale, you've got a car park, and you've got a very strong dealer network that you don't turn over many dealers. So those dealers have a sustainable business. They've got scale, they've got also existing customers that they can work with. And you talked about the three things that I thought really resonated through for your recipe for success. And that recipe is your customer first, your dealers to make sure you're a good business partner, and they're the key words that really resonate for me, and your people, your staff. And you really were focused on lifting that engagement, and you're benchmarking it with industry surveys to address any issues that may have been there, and you've really got them firing exceptionally well. And as a result, you don't turn over your staff all that much, and you don't turn over your dealers all that much because you're a good business partner. So when you look at the score, it makes sense when you look at those fundamental ingredients. When you talked about the GFC, the industry dropped by a third, but this time it's different. COVID's different, and the upside is that you're getting more demand because people are buying online. So the segment that you play the greatest in is in that smaller truck segment where the driver can actually use a car license to drive that truck. So that's actually quite a lucrative market to be in because it's actually growing, but also crosses over into the construction side of things. So you've got delivery, you've got construction, and also you're supporting the agricultural side. But you also love it when the government spends money on infrastructure. And a lot of those council trucks that we talked about, your market share in local government is super strong. So all those potholes getting fixed are usually with an Isuzu truck. So, but the other thing that I was amazed with is the retention, how long the cars are actually kept. The trucks are kept. So 7 years is the new truck owner, but the average truck is 14 years old. The good thing is, at least from the smaller trucks, do around about that 30 to 40,000 Ks a year. Whereas the larger trucks, as you go up to the medium duty trucks, they're pushing towards that up to the 100, but then the bigger trucks, the line haul, do a lot more than that. But really the bread and butter is in those smaller trucks. And when you look at the customer and what you've pivoted this with COVID, with how you're engaging with your customers, is you've got a robust digital strategy. And this is something I think a lot of people that have been immersed in the car business would not realize that the truck business is actually a very sophisticated business, because the buyer is not emotive. They really want to know about what's the right truck. And you've got over 200 variants of truck that you can cater for their specific needs. And you've got the ISIS product, which is a specialist tool where they can find out what is the right truck for them to have. So you've got the robust digital strategy. They can do their virtual tours of the vehicles. You've got ISIS, where you've got the sales force have that to work with them to get the right truck for that customer's need. Because the two key drivers to buy a truck are fit for purpose. Does it do the job it's supposed to do? And B, is it reliable? And you've got that reliability well and truly there. And that's why when you look at your dealer performance metrics, market share is important, but where the opportunities to improve are in that service and parts business, because you want to get that after sale service because you've got the reliable product, but you want to make sure that the dealers have that good back end, because then they can keep that engagement with those customers and get them into a new truck, hopefully before the 7 years is up. So when we look at the future, you share our optimism. The future's rosy. There's government spending, stimulus money, and low interest rates are here for a while. And that stimulus will definitely flow into buying vehicles that need to support that infrastructure spend or development. But the one thing that you highlighted is in the horizon that you see the biggest opportunity. There's electrifications coming, autonomous vehicles, and there's some shared services. But really the big one is the connected truck. And that connectivity back to base and that predictive maintenance and costs, etc., really will be the new frontier when it comes to trucks. However, diesel's still going to be here for some time because it just makes sense right here, right now, in the short and medium term and even into the longer term. So, Andrew, have I missed anything?
No, look, as I said to you before, I came into the trucking industry 15 odd years ago and didn't really know what I was coming into. But wow, it's been a blessed ride, and it's a fun industry to be in. As you said, that cars is about emotion, trucks is a much more business-oriented thing, but it's full of great people, and it's an industry that I absolutely love being part of.
Andrew, also from our side, thanks very much. It's been a fascinating discussion. I spent 2 years in trucks in the early part of my career.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So with UD Trucks, it's great to hear some of these things again, and it just brings back good memories of the past. So I really enjoyed listening to you and understanding more of the market.
How long ago was your UD experience?
It was in 91, 92.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know whether you're across the news, but UD was a Volvo brand up until this year, and there's been a deal done between Isuzu Motors and Volvo. And as of December, UD will become a fully owned subsidiary of Isuzu Motors, which is an exciting move for the Japanese truck market, yeah.
Very unique, very unusual. But no, that's fantastic. Well, really appreciate you covering a lot of this stuff. This has been a fantastic interview, and hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It's been good.
Thanks for listening today. Hopefully you got as much out of today's session as what we did. The truck business is an exciting business and one that has many moving parts, pardon the pun, but there's a lot to it. And Andrew really covered off some great stuff. If you'd like to know more, please reach out to John Sinclair or myself, Mark Palavestra, on LinkedIn, or put a comment on the YouTube video below. Please subscribe to us and tick the bell to make sure that you get updates when we publish a new podcast. And this podcast is available on YouTube. It's available on Spotify and on iTunes as well. If you need any other information or you'd like to explore some sponsorship opportunities, please reach out to us via LinkedIn.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We look forward to chatting to you again next week.